Hey, Sens fans, welcome to Season 4, Episode 16 of the Senstennial Podcast, a member of the Hockey Podcast Network. On today's episode, we're going to talk about something that we think will be a major topic of conversation when new ownership takes over, whenever that ends up happening. Coaching. While DJ Smith is signed through next season and has a team option for the season following that, I think a new ownership group would likely spell the end of DJ Smith's tenure as the Sens bench boss, as they'd want to put their own hockey ops and coaching staff in place. Pretty standard across the league. So on today's episode, each of us have chosen a potential coaching candidate who we think could put the Sens on the right track going forward and make them a consistent playoff team. So on that note, let's get underway. Bennett's going to kick us off, and I'll let you do your thing, Bennett.
Sure thing. Well, I think the first and biggest name that's on everybody's minds this season as someone newly available would be Bruce Boudreau. This is a coach with a wealth of NHL experience, an all-around good guy from everybody that you hear, that you speak to about him as a coach, as a player, as a person. His career stats as a coach are pretty decent. He has over 1,000 NHL games coached, 617 wins, 342 losses. He has a points percentage of about 62%. I think it's very respectable numbers. I think that this is a team, the Senators, that are trending in the right direction. We've seen, I think, some progress this year. Certainly, we can say that in a month like now in February, where we've had a few good results recently to look back upon. Maybe we couldn't have said that as easily at other points in the season, but I think that we have a lot of talent and we have a bit of a critical mass building up, and having a coach with a lot of experience who can help, we hope, elevate the team to be greater than the sum of its parts is something that we need right now. And I think that Boudreau could be that guy. And we know that very little of the situation in Vancouver and the dumpster fire season that they've had has been his doing. He was sort of they're also dealing actually very similarly to the Senators. They're dealing with a new ownership situation, a new GM. There's been a lot of turnover there, and he might have been the guy for the previous management, but he's not the guy of the new management, and they made that clear before the season even started. Which left him in an awkward situation. I think you saw the fans, the players to a lesser extent, rallying around the guy. So I think that he comes in with, he leaves at Vancouver with his head held high. And I think it could be a nice feel-good story for the Sens to go for somebody like that and give him another shot in the Canadian market.
Yeah, and that's one thing that Bruce Boudreau has never really failed to have. Like, he's a guy who generally has fan support. Obviously, towards the end of his tenure with both the Capitals and Wild, a lot of people dialed in on his lack of postseason success, and that's totally valid. But from an actual coaching entertainment standpoint and being likable by fans, I don't think Boudreau has ever suffered in that category. So, from that aspect, I think that's at least one positive as well, aside from having a great regular season coaching record throughout his tenure across multiple teams.
I think bringing Boudreau in would be an absolute win for the Senators as well. I really like him as a person. I like him as a coach. And the Vancouver thing is, as you noted, it's a tire fire. And that's not the situation a coach like Boudreau should be in. They don't have a direction at GM. They barely have a direction at ownership. So your coach isn't going to know what to do. And then, a couple weeks after Boudreau gets fired, they trade their captain. So Vancouver probably isn't the paragon of hope and direction and all this stuff. And I feel for Boudreau, and I think he's a great coach, and I think it's a great pick, Bennett.
And honestly, adding to the whole, problems in Vancouver, I believe it was reported that Jim Rutherford, who's the president of hockey ops in Vancouver, there's rumors he wants out of the organization. So, like, yikes, when one of your senior hockey ops personnel kind of wants to just piece out of the situation, that is not a good look. I know it's rumors, but yikes. But other Matt, I know that you had someone on your mind who's quite a well-known coach in the NHL, so I'll let you jump onto that individual.
Well, I think with new ownership and the idea that this is going to be one of the biggest sales, it probably will be the biggest sale of an NHL team um, thus far, creeping up at $800 million, maybe even nine, who knows? There's star power behind the hiring of this coach and the ownership and all this. And I think it's got to be Barry Trotz. This guy uh, just makes total sense. If you're bringing in Ryan Reynolds, if you're bringing in a conglomerate of all these people that want to be involved with the Senators, that are just like a really good background to really, really get excited about, bringing in a hotshot coach like Barry Trotz is the way to go. This guy has just short of 1,000 wins. He's got 914 wins. Yeah, the devil's in the details. He's also got a Stanley Cup. And the thing that sort of jumps out at me is he has 2 Jack Adams trophies. And for a stretch of time in the 2010s, if you won a Jack Adams, you were getting fired the next year. And he has 2. And I think he's a winning coach in his entire career. Most of his career was spent with Nashville from 1998 until 2013, 2014. That's a really long time. And I think once he moved on from that, he was going to a team in Washington that always had Stanley Cup playoff aspirations because they had Alex Ovechkin. They had Nicholas Backstrom. They had young guys coming up with Evgeny Kuznetsov. These were pieces in place that should be winning you a Stanley Cup. And the thing that was sort of missing with Washington for a good chunk of time was coaching. They moved on from Bruce Boudreau because they couldn't get over the hump, and then they moved on to pretty meh coaching after that. And then you bring in Barry Trotz, who just fresh off of firing from Nashville, who the season before he had a winning record. But he moved on, goes to Washington. Every season he was there, they had a winning record, and like a big time winning record. And it culminated in a Stanley Cup. And not a lot of coaches can say they have a Stanley Cup. And Barry Trotz is one of them that can. Still has 2 Jack Adams too. What makes that so crazy is that following that Stanley Cup, he was out the door. They fired him. Why? Because they couldn't afford him. So he goes to the New York Islanders, of all places. And every season when he was with New York, he still had an above 500 record. Yeah, obviously they're not a team that's going to be looked at to be going the distance. But the Islanders, for how long were they middling and doing the same thing over and over and not expecting anything different? And then they bring in a good coach and he gets them to the playoffs. And I think one of the important things to remember with Barry Trotz was coming from Nashville. Oh, this guy's super defensive minded. He's going to change players. He's a defense first systems coach, which isn't a problem. Ottawa needs defense first because we don't have that at all. But you have a guy who is defense focused, but isn't going to shy away from top offenses. And when he was with Washington and when he was with the Islanders, he had top 10 offenses in the league. And I remember when he went to Washington, there were a lot of question marks on whether or not he was going to hinder Alex Ovechkin's goal scoring. Well, I can tell you that out of the 4 seasons that he was there, his lowest point goal total was 33, which, yeah, probably not the best, but he had 2 50-goal seasons and a 49-goal season. So
not too bad.
Exactly. And one of the other things that was always sort of a question mark about him was he as a good development coach? Was he good with young guys? And the answer honestly wasn't a resounding yes. But at the point we are now, the Senators' young guys are going to be 3 years into the league. Tim Stützle is 3 years into the league now. Jake Sanderson's going to be entering his second year next year, but the guy plays like he's been here 8 years already. We are at a point where a coach like Barry Trotz could elevate us to the playoffs at minimum. And yeah, it's probably going to be a high price tag, but the ownership is going to want to make a splash, and a positive splash at that. Yeah, he wants to become a GM at some point. Who doesn't? You know who else did that? Brian Murray went from coach to GM, and look how that worked out. I'm just saying, fellas, Barry Trotz is the guy.
Yeah, no, you make a good case. And honestly, on the topic of the New York Islanders, look at how good that team was. They gave the Tampa Bay Lightning a real run for their money in back-to-back Eastern Conference finals.
Yeah.
They almost grinded them out. I remember it was the second time that they had played the Tampa Bay Lightning in the playoffs in recent years. And I believe it was game 7. And the previous game, I think Tampa had exploded on New York and just like, I don't know, put up like 6 or 7 goals. It was ridiculous. And everyone's like, oh no, Tampa's just going to run away with it. And, the next game is just going to be a blowout. New York won't be able to stop them. The Islanders actually held Tampa to a single goal. They shut it down. And, the fact that they were able to do that, getting absolutely shelled one night, coming back and putting in one of the strongest defensive performances. It's too bad they lost for the Islanders organization, but, having someone who has that much capability of being like, okay, guys, listen, we got away from our systems tonight. We got away from our structure. Let's, just kind of get back to basics. Let's do our thing. And we can shut down Tampa. And they almost did. So that's always really impressed me. And I definitely think that if you bring in a guy like Trotz, you're going to get a really nice defensive system, but you're also not going to limit players who are flashy. And we saw that with Barzal. Trotz was there and Barzal was still doing his thing, and no problems there. So yeah, I don't think it's hard to argue against Trotz, and I don't think you find anybody really arguing in the Sens fan base against a hire like that. So like you said, if ownership's looking to make a splash, Barry Trotz is a hell of a guy to do that.
Sunday. Are you ready for the biggest Sunday in sports? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 57, has all the Super Bowl action you need. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, all customers can get in on the Super Bowl 57 excitement with DraftKings Happy Hour Super Boosts. Check the DraftKings Sportsbook app every day between 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to see what prop bet will be boosted. I'm probably taking any Patrick Mahomes parlay that there is and the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. So, it's easy. Go bet on it. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. New customers can bet $5 on Super Bowl 57 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. This time of year, everyone's talking about making big changes, which is all well and good, but most of the time pretty unrealistic. I've actually found that the smallest changes to your routine can make the biggest impact. In the same way, you don't have to break the bank to make a big deal purchase. Even the smallest things can be a part of a big change if it's something you use every day. Like my Raycons. Raycon is a premium audio at the perfect price point so you can build great habits without breaking the bank. I think what's great about my Raycons is that I don't have to worry when they're in my ears and I'm working out if they're going to pop out. Whether you're looking for a pair of everyday earbuds, low latency gaming headphones, or a speaker with a battery that will last all night at your next party, Raycon's got you covered. And yep, Raycons start at half the price of other premium audio brands. So you don't even have to choose between products. You can get one of each, or a pair and a spare, and still pay less than you would with some of the other guys. I like the fact that my Raycons are good whenever I'm using them, and I never have to worry. Even if you know you'll love your Raycons as much as I do, Raycon wants to make sure you feel great about your purchase. They offer buy now, pay later options. Every purchase has an easy and free return guarantee. What I love about the Raycon is the earbud tap functions, the noise isolation, and I really love the water and sweat resistance. Ready to buy something small with a big impact? Go to buyraycon.com/THPN today to get 15% off your Raycon order. That's buyraycon.com/THPN to score 15% off. buyraycon.com/THPN.
Welcome back, everyone. And we still got another coach to cover because I got to get my pick in here. Before we get to that, I do know that some people will wonder why we didn't bring this coaching candidate up. So I will give an honorable mention to Jacques Martin. I think a lot of Sens fans have some nostalgia for Jacques Martin, or at the very least know that he's renowned for his defensive style coaching. And, he is well liked in the market. That said, he hasn't coached in a bit of time, and he's getting up there in age, and I'm not really sure if he's stepping away from the game or what his status is at. But to me, I don't see him as a coach that you're bringing in for, a multi-year deal. To me, he seems like if you're going to bring him into a coaching staff, he's better suited as like, an associate coach or an alternate assistant coach, what have you. I think that role might suit him better. He did a great job of that with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I think that, putting him in a role like that is more suited. But just for the Jacques Martin lovers out there, I just want to let you know, we didn't forget about him. Honorable mention to him. But the pick that I'm going with is former coach of the Boston Bruins and more recently Montreal, but we'll forget about that, Claude Julien. Now, Claude Julien actually started his NHL coaching career with the Montreal Canadiens, and of his 19 seasons as an NHL coach, it was one of only 2 seasons where he had a losing record. I'll let that sink in. Dang. 19 seasons in the league, 2 of them with a losing record. So that is impressive. Anyway, like Barry Trotz, he's a defensive-minded coach. He really likes having a 5-man defensive zone coverage. He doesn't so much play a man-to-man coverage. That's just his style. But it doesn't mean that the offense is diminished because he has a more defensive-minded structure or system for his teams. These are teams that he runs that are dominant in possession, and offensively, they typically generate it from their blue line, which Ottawa is not very good at. And he also his teams generate more offense from the slot. Typically, from what I've researched, they don't generate as much offense from in tight in the crease. But also, I think when you have a guy like Brady Tkachuk on your roster, that is certainly something that you can add to your team structure systems, and it wouldn't take away from the rest of what you have in mind for the team. Aside from that, you would think, man, only 2 losing seasons. He must have had some really offensively gifted players across his NHL coaching career. In the span of those 19 seasons, he had a total of 2 players who were point per game players over a full season. Marc Savard and Brad Marchand. So it's like, you look at the teams he had, he didn't have powerhouse players who were putting up 90 points a season. He didn't have guys like that. And, Ottawa's got several guys who could be point per game players. So that's another thing that you think about, you look at a coach like this, defensively sound, he can get away with teams that don't have offensively gifted players, still have solid results. The Ottawa Senators have offensively gifted players. So that's just another element that, again, you can add to your repertoire. Aside from that, his career regular season point percentage is a .587 or a 58.7% points percentage. So that's great. If we're looking at DJ Smith's, it's 45.8%. And that's really been helped out by the Sens sitting right now just over 500. But that could always change. Hopefully not, but you never know. And so what I'm trying to get at is Claude Julien's a coach who's well respected. Like Barry Trotz, he has a Stanley Cup. He's coached a multitude of different teams. He was even fired from a team where he almost had a 50-win season, but that's just Lou Lamoriello logic, so we won't get into that. But, he's a coach who comes in. He's got a name. I think his tenure in Montreal the second time left some people thinking that, he was no longer a standout NHL coach. But like I said, with his time with Montreal, he only had one losing season in record. He was let go in his final season with a 9-5-4 record, which fine, I guess if you're counting the overtime losses, about 500. But in general, like, he's never had a season where his team has been absolutely demolished. He has never been a basement team or a coach of a basement team. And he gets the most out of his players. And that is what the Ottawa Senators need. They don't need a coach who is good at developing and holding the hands of players and getting them to be that next big NHL legend. He is a guy who's going to get the most of the players you have, and he is going to make them work defensively and get the results. And the Sens need that. They need a bit of tough love. And that's my rant on Claude Julien. Thanks for coming to the Matt TED Talk.
Well, listen, I think any of these guys would be a really smart move. I can't critique any of the choices that you guys have made or my own. And I mean, we've touched on this we've touched on this on the pod before, but what I don't want to see, especially from new ownership, is a lack of ambition where they just promote whoever is standing around with a clipboard in their hand within the organization already, or they find, some unimpressive, like minor league coach or, assistant coach or something. It's just like the team has not showed a lot of ambition with their coaching hires or with any of their hires really in the last number of years. And I'd like to see that change. I want to see them go for a big name, not because I think big names are necessarily better, but it sends a message to the players, and it sends a message to the other teams in the league and to your own fans that you're serious, and that that you're picking someone based on what you think they can do for the team and not what they can do for your bottom line. And I think we're at the point now, and particularly when new ownership hopefully comes in and takes over, that the Sens will be able to compete for the biggest names in the league, whether it's hiring a new coach, hiring a new GM, or signing free agents, whatever it is. It's been too long that the Sens have been dealing with the scraps and whatever they can find and string together and kind of put a passable organization together. I think we want real talent, real hires, and like a real, like, serious direction from the team.
Yeah, I think you put it beautifully there. I think we have a sort of culture with the Senators right now that average is fine, but it's not anymore. This, as I said, it's going to be a record sale for the NHL. You want to put your stamp on things, and that starts with the players and the guy behind the bench. It's going to be really important to pick a coach who is going to make a difference, and any of the guys who are listed can do it. Julien is great because he's literally in Ottawa all the time. I see him at games a lot, and it's an opportunity for you to connect more with your French Canadian fan base if you go for a guy like him. But we don't need any more OHL coaches. We don't need a guy who was doing some solid stuff in the AHL. I want a guy who had an NHL head coaching job, because
someone who's got a fucking ring.
Yeah. And a Jack Adams is a good start. A ring, even better.
Yeah.
We need a guy who is going to be a pillar holding for our child, the German Tim Stützle.
Yeah, we just need someone who has credibility, has a track record of success. When the Sens made the Guy Boucher hire, he had, a resume which had him getting to the Eastern Conference Final with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yeah. And that was nothing to scoff at. They went to 7 games against the Boston Bruins, Claude Julien's Boston Bruins, by the way. And, they had a good run. And so that hire, I was like, okay, not my number one choice who I wanted. But, he ended up doing the best that he could with the roster he was given in that first season he was with the Sens. Unfortunately, it didn't work out here, too much resting and not enough weapons from that resting. So, yeah, I don't know. I get where the Sens were going with that, but they need someone who, hasn't jumped over to Europe for a few seasons because they can't get another NHL gig. They need someone who has a track record, is a proven NHL head coach, and can get the job done.
Yeah.
That's really it. That's what they need.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
And I also wanted to give a special shout out to both David St. Louis and Nathan Nee. They both wrote in-depth articles that use either analytics or video analysis to show the impact that Claude Julien had on the teams that he's coached. So I recommend looking up them and looking up their work on Claude Julien, because I used them as some of my research for today's episode, and I found that it was extremely informative. But
And I want to give a shout out to Google for telling me what Boudreau's record was, which really helped with really round out my research from nothing to knowing his record.
Can you spell that? Can you spell that Google out for me?
Yeah. It's GOOGLE .internet.
Oh, .internet. Oh, damn.
Internet, yeah.
Damn, Google really does own the internet. Jeez. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening or watching to today's episode. Really appreciate it. As always, you can find us on Twitter at Senstennial or Reddit or Instagram at the Senstennial. Also, please make sure to check us out on Faces Magazine Ottawa's 2023 Best of Awards. We've been nominated for the Best Sports Podcast category, which is sweet. We will put the link to that in the description so you can go and vote for us once a day. We'd love if you could do that for us. And thank you for watching. Until next time, go Sens go.
Go Sens go, baby.